Evening, everybody. We're back. Gosh, it's been, what, almost 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks? It's hard to keep track of time. Had a little visit from Corona-chan, and she's kind of warped my perception of time passing. It's good to be back with everybody. I'd like to invite my panel to say hi. Say hi to tonight's panel. As you guys can hear, we have quite the lineup. Uh-oh. I think the panel's a little low. See what we can do about that. So how's your week, guys? Who wants to start?
Nothing too dramatic. Just some comments here and there.
The panel's a little low. See what we can do about that.
I've been starting to ride over the obelisk for the Bizarre Archives. So did a couple blogs this week. One of them about Thibault Corday, which we talked about last time, and Mongoose Meerkat. So Sword and Sorcery from Cursova magazine. Also been reading through the Perry Rodin Neo again. So that's a German space opera serial.
Good stuff.
And studying Japanese and the order of battle for the modern Russian Italian tactical group, just for fun.
That's exciting. Well, I think I got your volume up, but now there's an echo. But it just wouldn't be a retrospective episode without audio issues to start things off.
Just for fun.
That's exciting. Well, I think
It's what we do.
Okay, now you guys are still coming in low. So do please keep the discussion going so I can check your levels.
Okay, sounds good. See Owl's joined us here as well.
Hey, ECO.
Oh, CL's here.
He just isn't quite up to the microphone yet.
Testing.
Oh yeah.
There he is. Okay, sounds good. See Owl's joined us here as well.
Hey, ECO.
Okay.
Actually happy with the lineup tonight, because especially Pulp Archivist, after you recommended Next Life as a Villainous last time, I went and watched it and wrote quite possibly the most unconventional anime review I've ever written.
That's, as I said, that's one of the nice things about the growing female engagement in.
Sorry, especially Pulp Archivist.
Let me.
You recommended Next Life as a Villainous last time I went and watched it.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's one of the nice things about the growing female involvement with isekai. That's, as I said, that's one of the nice games really have a knack. The growing female engagement with the same old conventions. So that's where all the originality is today.
Well, it solidified a couple of theories. The distance, which I feel like I ought to explain a bit more. So for those who weren't on the Discord discussion, the review that I wrote was women are like the graphite-tipped control rods of a Soviet European nuclear, which also sparked an entire discussion on nuclear accidents and designs. But
as it should.
yes. And Ardenon, please weigh in if I get any of the physics part of this wrong, but the reason I said that is actually the RVMK reactor design is quite good when you come to it. With the
minor things.
The reason, and this is going to necessitate a brief discussion of when it was built, but the reason BMK reactors were built the way they were was so a nuclear bomb takes about 80% enriched uranium. A nuclear reactor usually takes somewhere between 3 and 5. RVMK reactors were built the way they were so that the Soviets could create nuclear reactors that only use 2% enriched uranium, which, you know, if you have a problem with extraction, refining, or whatever, it's intensive. So the control rods in an RVMK reactor are actually pretty chaffy, like the boron acts as a retardant for neutrons, sort of absorbing them and preventing a reaction from going. So they use that to cool down the reaction. Addition to just water. While graphite tips are used to accelerate the reaction, essentially. And the reason Chernobyl went off was because physics sucked. But the reason I say women are like the control rods on that is they, when properly employed, they provide a moderating influence on the society of men, which uncontrolled turns into a conflagration, if not explosion, I think we can all agree.
Reasonable way of looking at it.
Yep. And then in a couple of scenarios, they can actively make things worse, cause fuel on the fire, or in the case of a society that's been brought to the absolute limit, every single thing that would go wrong is they can just cause an explosion. Probably just gave every single feminist who will ever listen to this an aneurysm, but that's how I see women and men as interactive. And the reason I wrote that review with My Next Life as a Villainous is it's basically a show about a woman going out and just improving her surroundings through the power of being a good dude. At least that's how I saw it, Pulp Archivist. If you've got another take, I'd love to hear it.
Well, there's a reason why I call it the princess improvement genre, and there's more to it. It's pretty popular. Tier Moon Empire is another good one who hasn't come out with an anime yet, but it's probably going to be a time. But all these protagonists, usually princesses or duchesses or some sort of lady, they wake up, they realize that they're either it's either a reincarnation, or they realize they're trapped in their favorite game, and they know how the ending goes. And so it's not so much as, it's for those who get properly isekai'd in it, and they're trying everything to break their fate for the reincarnation. A lot of it's learning how to be a for lack of a better term, a woman instead of being selfish and all that. So there's a lot of fake it till you make it. There's a lot of either being a good person or learning to be a good person in the genre. So in the case of the fans call her Baccarina because she is Katarina, the main character of My Next Life. It's a little bit of an airhead. But in her case, it's she's generally a good person who's just trying to get everything to not end up in a horrible fate. And something like Tyrman Empire, the main character was exceedingly selfish, somehow got sent back in time, and now is having to relearn basically how to be a good person. And that's how she gets out of her horrible fate, by not being selfish, by not being greedy, by actually seeing others and trying to help others. She helps herself.
That's actually what I like about Villainous, because yes, the protagonist is as dense as a neutron star, but much like with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the problems are not caused by her being an idiot, and she can be quite clever in solving them.
Okay, and good to hear that our audio issues have been resolved.
Excellent. And yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay, well, I was gonna do a brief recap. So we're starting to get into like the kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark National Treasure, uncovering the secret history leg of the plot here. So now that we've got Mustadio the engineer, or a guy with a gun guy, as I affectionately call him, we're starting to dig into the strata of the previous civilizations that came before this stage of Ivalice, and as fans of Final Fantasy XII could tell you, the civilization from that game is one of those. So, yeah, we're getting into some deep lore here. Anyway, didn't mean to kill the conversation. That was a pretty rousing back and forth there. Please continue.
Just want to say thank you for the recommendation. And comparing it to that other thing which shall not be mentioned, I actually bounced this theory off of CL, but I don't think that there's actually such a thing as a straight or gay woman. I can explain, I promise. But I think, like, when it comes to sexual desire for men, it's a lot more physical. For women, it's a lot more emotional. So you see this with when those sorts of desires get disordered with men or women, you start to see men just going more and more into the purely physical enjoyment, while women emotionally vampiric. Is that the right word in this case? But when the two sexes are playing off of each other, it provides that harmony effect. Whereas, once again, when it gets disordered, everything just goes wrong. Explosion.
Intriguing.
Interesting thoughts.
Let's take a look at who's in chat tonight. First, we got Bradford Walker, OG Geek Gab fan, helping us celebrate Geek Gab's 1K subscribers. That's right, for those who didn't know.
Hey!
Yeah, Daddy Warpig and Dornall did it. Hit the magic number.
Well done.
And from what
Yes, congratulations.
from what I understand of the YouTube algorithm, the first 1,000 subscribers is the hard part, and they should expect some not necessarily exponential growth, but rapid growth from this point. Like I've heard it said that it's easier to get from 1K to 10K than from 0 to 1K.
I don't know.
Certainly hope so. You guys have earned it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's been shared as to why that happened, but I know why the 1K happened.
Oh, do enlighten our audience.
Well, that was a John Delarose stream, and John just said took a look at the channel and said, these guys are only this far away from it. We need to get them over 1,000. So John got him over 1,000.
John is just a peach, and if there are any John Delarose fans watching now, welcome. But we do have more Geek Gab fans. So of course we've got Christopher Cordham, who is also a major Xseed backer. Thank you. We've got Yvette Volkova. Welcome.
So, speaking about giant robots and things I saw on Twitter, Brian, what are your thoughts about G Gundam?
It's the last action hero of Gundam.
For those of us who don't know what Last Action Hero is.
Oh wow, really? Okay. It's a nudge and wink self-parody that wants to have its cake and eat it too, and tries to go for straight war drama and comedy, and in my informed opinion succeeds at neither.
So, like, if Galaxy Quest was bad.
Yes. Right. I can buy guns now. Look at that. Oh yeah, I'm doing that.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my chemist and Oracle some guns.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
No, that's fine. But yeah. So, everybody knows the secret to a great parody is that it would work as a story in the genre that it's lampooning if you took the jokes out, if you played it straight. Like, Airplane, a perfect example. Right? It's a great disaster movie, even without the jokes.
Actually, a story about Airplane, it was literally a serious disaster movie script that they added jokes to.
Yeah, Airport.
Yeah, that's why they cast Leslie Nielsen, who, up till that point, was like a straight man in westerns and cop shows and stuff. So yeah, great point.
Or the aforementioned Galaxy Quest.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason.
Right as well.
Yeah.
Does Princess Bride count as a parody? Or just us play it straight and it also has some funny jokes in there?
I hate to be the guy who invokes the book.
It plays jump rope with that line.
Fair.
It does. I would say the book definitely. But yeah, the movie's a bit more ambiguous.
Yeah. I'd say this is one of those cases where the movie is superior to the book.
Hmm.
In large part because of the performances.
Yes. I will say I was looking for the sequel when I read it as a teen.
Did they ever release that?
I think that was part of the gag built into the book. Like, there never was going to be a sequel. It was just part of, I guess, part of the parody, part of the, a little bit part of the world building too. But
Actually, now that you bring this up, any of you ever watched the Venture Brothers cartoon?
Yes.
a long time ago.
Okay, so there's... Not sure about the last few seasons, but there are a lot of that show where it actually works as just a straight up adventure drama, even though it's lampooning a lot of the 80s action cartoon stuff. And I think that...
No, it's lampooning the 60s action cartoon stuff. That's a straight up jab at Johnny Quest from the 1960s.
And in
Wasn't
several
there
episodes,
some
Fantastic
G.I.
Four.
Joe stuff in there too?
Yeah, there is. It's
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, 1960s. But the point is, parodies, I think, are at their best when they actually like the source material.
yeah.
Because otherwise, it's a deconstruction, and I'm going to use
Right.
air quotes around that because what I've learned, deconstruction is usually different from what a lot of creatives think it is, which is a lot of deconstruction turns into mean-spirited parody, very mean-spirited, and take that to the genre.
Well, I will. I'll make the argument. Probably won't make it well, but I'd say that Lord of the Rings is deconstructive. So's Chronicles of Narnia.
If you're
Go ahead. Well, in the case of C.S. Lewis, you're taking those fairy tales, and in the case of Tolkien, he explicitly said that he was trying to basically disassemble the Germanic epics, the Icelandic sagas, and put it back together, and also throw in this cool language that he invented.
Well, a proper deconstruction has to reconstruct. It's either taking the same elements, rearranging them a different way, or it's taking different elements and rearranging them to look like something else. It's like instead of serving strawberry shortcake, you get like strawberry ice cream with whipped cream and with graham cracker crumbs sprinkled over it. It's a deconstruction and reconstruction to kind of get a similar effect. And I have to keep on going to cooking because cooking, to me, the chef's kitchen is the only place that gets deconstruction right, because you have to have reconstruction at the other end. It has to be something that the customer wants. And a lot of the literary forms forget the reconstruction, and they've definitely forgotten audience appeal.
Well, you've also got the Paradise Lost syndrome, where when completely blanking.
Milton?
Yes. When Milton wrote it, he did it as a screed against what he saw as the tyranny of rhythm, meter, and rhyme in poetry. And he could do that because he understood how meter and rhyme worked. But these days, when you see someone try to do that, it's just modern poetry, which is nothing of the sort, because they don't understand how rhyme and meter works in the first place. Same thing with deconstruction.
Speaking of Paradise Lost, you've also got Milton's Devil, which a lot of people misinterpret as him being on the devil's side, because the devil comes across as heroic, but that's part of the point, because Milton's Lucifer is like a deconstruction of a classical pagan hero.
Yeah, kind of the old writing saw of before you break the rules, you first have to learn the rules. And either the rules aren't being learned or they've been completely forgotten, especially with a lot of modernist Satan as heroes, Neil Gaiman Sandman type interpretations of Milton. Yeah, that,
Yeah, there's a line I remember from the Sandman where Dream... Oh no, Dream isn't in it. It's Cain is talking to Lucifer. Because Dream has sent him as like an envoy because he's got the mark. And he's like the only one of Dream's servants that Lucifer won't just eviscerate on sight after getting humiliated by the Sandman in a duel earlier. And Lucifer quotes Paradise Lost, like the famous "'Tis better to reign in hell than serve in heaven" line. And Cain is just completely cowed at this point, and he's like, whatever you say. And Lucifer tells him, well, I didn't say it, Milton did, and Milton was blind. Which he was, he had his daughters take dictation for him. But I digress.
Like Saracen has entered.
Hello, people.
Evening.
Apologies for the tardiness.
Evening, welcome.
Yeah, apologies for the tardiness. I have been off Discord for a little while and kind of got this late notice, so here I am. Good to see you all.
Hello.
What news from the distant and exotic Orient?
Occident as a word, geographically relative to you, I think. As for news, well, not much I'm willing to divulge on the internet, but I will say I recently got to see a classic for the first time in my life, actually. It was Casablanca. I managed to see that in theaters
oh,
Oh,
nice.
nice.
for the 80th anniversary. So that was a good viewing experience.
And that's the movie that
I can see
codified the
what
Hollywood formula.
Yeah, I see how it was very influential for its time and everything after. So that was an interesting viewing experience. Other
Classic
than
for a
that,
reason.
just been getting situated into a new job, a new warehouse job. Yeah, not much other than that to report, gents. How about y'all? I suppose you've already passed through this, so
Well, we can
you don't
do
have
it
to go
again.
through all again. Well, if you're
Oh,
so inclined.
sideways windmill.
Perry wrote down Neo, John Wayne, and a new blog to write at. So it's been my week.
Speaking of classic films, saw Kurosawa's Run the other day.
Kurosawa's what?
Run.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that one.
Oh, the one based on
Very
King
good.
Lear?
It's Kurosawa does King Lear.
Yeah.
Yep.
What did you think?
And just keeping up with a little bit of artwork and doing a little bit of writing.
And Martel and I have been playing a bunch of Turnip 28, which I will have to let him tell you about because I've got to go.
Oh,
Got a job that requires me to wake up pretty early in the morning now, so.
okay. Well, have a good night.
Well, get some rest.
See you later.
Sorry I can't hang with you guys as late, but I'll see ya.
Have a good one.
Peace, peace.
Yeah, I've got to say, for this game, are the sprites actually 2D or 3D?
The sprites are 2D.
Okay, because they can convey an impressive level of detail. Like, I remember there was some cinematic where the Dark Knight was talking to Reinhardt's brother, and the brother stands up and twirls a glass of wine around, and you can actually see it.
And I'm saying that's why.
Yeah, there's something about the.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I've taken more than my fair share of turns.
Well, I think we're going to say the same thing. That's why it's such a shame that the industry decided to abandon 2D just as it was getting interesting. Because yeah, this is what 32-bit 2D is capable of. It can convey that nuance.
Considering that even 8-bit 2D and 16-bit 2D could do what they do, this is incredible stuff. Yeah, I'm not saying you don't need to go any higher to 2.5 or to 3, but there's so much space in this medium.
You know, I wonder how different do retro graphics look nowadays when you play them on HD screens or HD monitors compared to back in the day when they were designed with CRT TVs in mind.
They look worse.
I've seen something. Yeah, I've seen something about actually the technical differences about that. However, that's well in the memory vault, unfortunately.
It's like this.
I only remember vaguely seeing a screenshot.
Yeah, you know, pointless
Go ahead.
paintings like Monet paintings, like the one that Cameron stares at in Ferris Bueller's Day Off and just keeps zooming in until the picture disappears and you just see the little dots of paint. Or like a comic book panel, right? So, taking an old school...
The old 4-color offset.
Yeah, taking an old school, 480i resolution standard def TV image in a special video game, because the older video game consoles actually had lower than 480p resolution. And putting those on a modern day HD display is like putting a pointless painting under a microscope. So, and
Good metaphor.
Thanks. You can tell I did customer support on LCD TVs for a few years, but yeah, I'm looking at it right now because my my monitor for the game that I got my PS2 plugged into right now, which I'm playing this game on, is like an older 720p TV, and I can tell it doesn't look as good as the gaming CRT in my living room because, as I've mentioned before on stream, I'm a retro gamer, so I do have an old vintage flat screen CRT, which I actually do most of my retro gaming on, and everything from original NES up through Dreamcast just looks better on it because it's meant to work with the lower resolution.
Kind of like how you can do some stuff with vacuum tubes that you can't do with modern electronics.
Oh, really? Like what?
I was just curious.
That's about the sum of my knowledge on that subject, unfortunately.
Yeah, the voltage current or current voltage response in a vacuum tube is much different than a transistor. Transistor is very much like a switch. It's an on-off, whereas a vacuum tube is a kind of a slow build to get to the same spot. Now, a field effect transistor, it can have some of the same behavior as a tube. So for low voltage outputs or low voltage applications, you can sometimes emulate that tube response with an FET or a JFET.
Isn't kind of a analog versus digital type effect? Like I know several enthusiasts say they can hear the difference between analog recording sound-wise and digital recording sound-wise because of the gaps that happen with digital.
And
Right.
that's true. Records are, my dad's an audiophile, so records are actually inherently superior for recording because there's technically an infinite variation of information that can be recorded on it.
In some respects, there are people who say the same thing about audio systems that are built with tubes versus transistors. That there's a softer response that you get from a tube amplifier, a tube system. And again, you can now buy tubes, or at least certain classes of tubes, from Eastern European countries that are now manufacturing them again. Not the full range that were available in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But I knew of people who would replace tubes with field effect transistors to, just to have a replacement component in a device. Whereas the tube burned out, they were able to use the tube socket and then solder in an FET or a JFET or two.
Yeah, and in video terms, here's a concrete gaming example. So, the monitors that Sega of Japan would use to build their games on had perfectly square pixels. Like, they weren't consumer grade, they were like industrial grade software engineering equipment. And initially, the Sega programmers did not realize this. And what they learned was that old-style CRT TVs have pixels that are slightly rectangular. They're a little bit taller than they are wide. And they noticed that led to some color bleed. Well, what the Sega developers figured out was, well, okay, we can use that effect of the pixels that, like, we program on being different in dimensions slightly than on a television. So they use it to effectively blend and create more colors, which is why most, like, Sega Master System and Genesis and even some Saturn emulators don't look right. Because they correct for that. And I don't know the names of any off the top of my head, but there are some now that do emulate that effect on modern LCD screens. But you really can't do it like unless you account for that. So that's one example of like an entire tool in the artist's repertoire that was lost because of the change from CRTs to LCDs.
Brian, can you minimize some of that pointillism by moving farther away from the screen? Can you get a little bit more of the blend back?
Let me see. I'm gonna try that now. Oh, let me take my glasses off. Yeah, it helps a little bit. Another practical pointer is that most people sit too close to their TVs. Mm-hmm. The general rule is, so if you're dealing with a 16:9 screen, which is standard for HD displays these days, I'm trying to think of the math here, but like I believe the rule is that for every foot you are away from the screen, I believe you get like 6 inches of screen or something like that. Like that's what it translates into. So basically, divide the number of inches your screen is by 6, and that's how many feet you should be away from it to simulate like a movie theater experience. And so sitting in the prescribed distance away might help. But it's not going to take care of all of it. So like, for example, well, if you even look at this menu right here, and it's got that kind of pebbly texture on it, like, that's not how it looks in the original. It's not quite that pronounced. If I can show you the save menu screen, like, that's really obvious, and has to do with even the color separation and stuff. Because like the way the game looks on YouTube is basically the way it looks on an LCD TV. Because I'm looking at both side by side right now. A good question.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
candy. I can't say I've ever heard of that before, but I wish I had. Otherwise, my eyes might not be so terrible if I listened to that rules when I was younger.
Well, that's
Oh, I
2020.
I pasted a web page in the chat, or in the Discord chat. Take a quick look at that if you'd like to.
Cool. But go ahead, Martel.
No, I was just saying there's been a lot of stuff that's been lost over the last few decades.
Here's something that's been lost over the last few decades. Today, I was watching with my my sister a behind the scenes making of Popeye back in, I want to say it was the 30s. But the original, of course, cel shaded animation, painted backgrounds.
They do
That sort of
rotoscoping
thing?
for that one.
I didn't see any rotoscoping in this particular production. It was a you can find it on YouTube. It was basically like an Aladdin Popeye. It was like an Aladdin tale, but with Popeye instead of Aladdin. It was just watching how animation got made back in the day. I can see why, obviously, they ditched it in favor of CGI and computer animation, just because it's economical, of course. But it's just such a shame to see what was lost, you know? Even if it's less economical than the technology we have now, there's something about cel-shaded, hand-drawn animation that is lost, and unfortunately the knowledge base is gone and can't be recovered quite so easily, I don't think.
Well, there's something about the 2D to it. I'm not a big fan of the. Okay, what Pixar did was great, but everybody started hopping on the Pixar train and trying to do their own thing with 3D. No, there was a complete and utter break in tradition there, and you know, I like the Tarzan movies. The Tarzan movie that Disney did. I think it did a lot of things with animation. Probably had some computer help to it, for especially when they were doing the extreme tree surfing scenes. But to shift from that to Ratatouille or Ice Age or Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, something got lost along the way.
Slipped into
It
Uncanny Valley.
Animation-wise, I'll agree on Ratatouille, but that's that was a good movie.
Keep in mind that even though Popeye was King Features, they were primarily a newspaper strip. So Max Fleischer, same person who would be doing Superman, was doing Popeye. So a lot of stuff went through Fleischer Studios.
Actually, yeah, it was at Fleischer Studios, and he was supervising the scanning of the cells into film.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who
Oh,
invented
yeah, he made a
Popeye is
little
from like
appearance
the
in
next
that.
town over from me.
E.C.
Oh,
Seeger.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Funny that.
So, since we got on the subject of Disney, I shouldn't have posted that. So, old versus new Disney. Have you noticed how the old 2D Disney films, some really great villain songs? You know, Be Prepared, Hellfire, the mob song from Beauty and the Beast, all that stuff. And then, like the Princess and the Frog, Friends on the Other Side. Solid villain song in there. And then once they switched it over to the 3D stuff, even though they've kept the musical a part of it, they either don't have a villain song at all, or it just falls completely flat, or it's like a 30-second refrain.
One was that, because I think it might easily be summed up with the difference between Eisner and Iger.
When was Princess and the Frog made?
And of
Relatively
course, the enemy
recently.
archer's name is Karen.
Princess and the Frog was 2009, and that was the last 2D film they did.
And that would have been the last one to get a start under Eisner, because Iger did a whisper campaign to get rid of him.
What was the last movie that Alan Menken and Steven Schwartz wrote music for? I'm curious now. Because you mentioned Hellfire, and A Hunchback of Notre Dame was one of their films that they wrote and composed for. If you want to look at, if you want to look at the root cause of the lack of good villain songs in later Disney, I think that might be it. Just Alan Menken and Steven Schwartz, because let's see. Pocahontas, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Enchanted. I know they did a lot of that era of Disney. Beauty and the Beast,
We've got
Aladdin, Little Mermaid.
Hunchback, Hercules. I think those are the last two Disney Home on the Range.
No, Alan Menken did Tangled.
No, you're right.
Okay, so
Shaggy-
Steven Schwartz was the one who died, huh?
Yeah, Shaggy Dog, Enchanted, then Tangled. Although
Alright,
Beauty and the Beast,
Right.
the new
I mean,
new version of 2017, he was involved in it.
Schwartz is
That's why I found one of
Schwartz.
them died.
Enchanted and Disenchanted. Schwartz did Prince of Egypt. Dang.
Oh wow.
That had some good songs to it.
Oh, I don't think there was a bad song in there. And
But
the
that was,
animation was just beautiful.
That wasn't Disney. That was geez.
DreamWorks.
Yeah, bingo. There it is.
Right.
Oh, whoops.
Right, but it was Katzenberg, and Katzenberg was a big mover in the Disney revival of the 90s.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about Prince of Egypt, even though I don't know if I should blame that film for it, but it was definitely one of the early ones, the trend of hiring big name actors to do voice work. The actors did a bang-up job of voicing the things.
Well, Oliver and Company had Billy Joel, so I mean it's been around Disney for since the late 80s at least.
Aladdin had Robin Williams. So
Yeah. True. I mean, they practically rewrote Friend Like Me and quite a few other songs for Robin Williams, to adapt to his humor style.
yeah, I mean, I see what you mean though, because the problem definitely has gotten more pronounced over the past few years. I can't.
Yep.
I just haven't. Yeah, I don't think off the top of my head, I can pin it down on any one culprit right now.
My
But
adjustment.
yeah, now the problem's gotten to the point where basically you throw a dartboard where 9 out of 10 spots on a dartboard is Chris Pratt, as far as voicing main character goes.
But
between
I was
Mario
thinking
and
Will Ferrell and
Garfield.
Megamind, actually.
I would say Chris Pratt is the more prevalent one now, since he's slated to voice both Garfield and Mario.
Like Chris Pratt voiced Garfield.
Now he's going to in the upcoming Garfield movie and in the upcoming Super Mario movie.
They're making another Garfield movie.
Boy, you got me.
Haven't we suffered enough already?
I am tired of the Earth, these people. I'm tired of being caught in the tangle of their lives. So said Garfield.
The thing is that I wish they had continued that trend when it went to anime, because at least with Disney, when they were releasing the Miyazaki films and the Ghibli films, Kiki's Delivery Service, for instance, Yeah, let's see. You had Phil Hartman. Phil Hartman. I don't know if that was his final role, but it was. He was voicing the cat. They brought in a lot of big names to do those, and we got convention geeks doing all the voice work now. So there's a certain level of not just professionalism and performance, but just professionalism, period, that was lost out on because, either they couldn't afford it or, they just went with whoever's cheap. I mean,
Convention really have a terrible union.
I mean, Britain has Brian Blessed, of all people, doing animation voiceover work, and we get a bunch of hangers on and drama kings and drama queens, and it's it's one of those things of what could have been if we actually got actors as opposed to hobbyists.
Well, speaking of knowledge that's been lost, rhetoric, public speaking. No one actually trains in that these days. Voice projection is a lost art. Yeah, and you can tell, read an election speech from 1900 to 1920. Any election speech, any party, any politician, it doesn't.
Well, you know who's training in public... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, your typical politician from back in the day talks at a level higher than most literature PhD students today.
Yeah, well, you know who's training in public speaking now is startup founders who need to pitch to investors.
Yeah, it does make sense. Persuasion, especially through speaking instead of just copywriting, is a very powerful skill. For any of you in the audience who are interested in that, your local Toastmasters chapter is a very underrated but powerful resource for helping you to learn how to be a more persuasive public speaker.
My tip is project from your diaphragm, not your throat. Your vocal cords will thank you.
Oh yes, you'll kill your throat, absolutely, without using a diaphragm. Although now with modern projection technology, that's less of a problem than it used to be.
You should learn how to speak without a microphone.
Well, you've got the
Personally,
best radio
I'm,
voice of all of us, so I'd be inclined to take your advice.
Fair enough.
Thank you. But no, Plato thought that the written word was ruining philosophy. I think that microphones ruin public speaking. Because, yes, you've got... When done properly, they are a great tool, but most people use them as a crutch.
That's true. To project actual presence, it helps to use the diaphragm.
And also know what to do with your hands and feet, because body language matters.
Yes.
Yes.
And Toastmasters will teach you all of that. Very powerful resource. And most importantly, they will teach you to exercise your verbal crutches from your vocabulary when you speak. The ums, the uhs, and whatnot. Any sort of filler talk like that. They will critique you in a respectful but useful way. Or at least, ideally, they should. Not every Toastmasters chapter is perfect, but it should be something that you should at least look into if you're looking into that.
Yeah. It's just a good skill to have in general. Looking at the chat. commentary on reading between Ben Wheeler and Roland
Oops.
Yancey.
As you gain a level.
The conversation I saw on Twitter talked about straight return to tradition. Doesn't work. We have to live in our own times and speak to people today. Ben Wheeler, Bill and Stuff, Friends on the Other Side is in my top 5. Pinkerton Ghost Villain songs. Mr. Yancey, as for the 1930s animation techniques, the creators of Cuphead animated their sprites that way. I remember seeing a few videos and interviews they had on the subject.
Yes,
Yeah,
I remember seeing that too.
It was a grueling process from what I understand. The knowledge base was gone after all. Yeah, it looked like they were very painstaking with doing that.
Yeah, they worked themselves to the bone. It's a shame that the actual cartoon on Netflix, not that I'm going to watch it on Netflix, because don't give money to people who hate you, but it's a shame that the actual cartoon, from what I've
That's
seen,
right.
like clips of it on commercials, isn't holding up to that. It kind of emulates the style, but it's different than you can tell, because they're not going to put in that amount of money and effort into a 12-episode series.
That's a shame.
That is a shame. It's a real shame, because that was almost the entire draw of Cuphead in the first place, is that a small team was working themselves to the bone to lovingly recreate what is essentially a 1930s video game, or what a video game would be like if they could make it in the 30s.
All right. Well, to catch people up on the game that we're playing, so these 12 holy stones have emerged. They're items of legend, kind of like the Sankara stones from Indiana Jones. According to legend, a king wanted to conquer the world, gathered them, used them to summon 12 demons, which got out of control, ran rampant, and were only finally defeated by an equal number of 12 holy warriors called the Zodiac Braves. The stones were then lost. They're now started to resurface. The Bart Trading Company, which is just the mob, basically, were after Mustadio for his. And now his dad there reveals that Cardinal Draculau, whose name is by no means an anagram of a classic villain, is actually a classic villain and is in cahoots with the Bart Trading Company to get the stone. But Mustadio took the foresight of making a fake one so the real one is safely in hand. I think that catches us up. But we're already starting to see the evil Church of Evil subplot that was just all the rage in the 90s in JRPGs.
12 demons. Why is it always 12?
Well, 12 is a significant number, particularly biblically.
12 apostles, 12 months of the year.
12 tribes of Israel.
Yeah, 12 tribes of Israel.
But in this game, it's 12 signs of the Zodiac. Although there are actually 13. There's a secret one you can find.
Ooh.
The physician.
Speaking of, it was just Chinese New Year, and this year is the Year of the Tiger, speaking of the Zodiac, with 12 signs on it.
Alright. For anyone who's really interested in stargazing, I kind of have to bring this up because of Zodiac and anything. You remember Curious George, right?
Yeah.
The little monkey?
Yeah. The author behind that was a stargazer. So if you notice, a lot of astronomy charts are very, very abstract, almost nonsensical. What H.A. Ray, I believe, was the name. The book's The Stars. What he did was he redrew all the constellations. So the kind of, stars in the sky, so straight lines and everything. So the Great Bear looks like a bear. So you can actually pick it out. Oh, Okay, there's the snout, there's the paws, there's the tail. Okay, it looks like a bear. It looks like a bear. The Leo the lion looks like a lion. Orion looks like a hunter holding the shield and a club instead of just a box and what we call his belt. So if you're interested in any sort of stargazing, learning how to find stars in the sky, learning the constellations, I definitely would recommend that book. And children's author making it accessible. So it's just I love that book since I was a little kid, and still have those shapes in my mind when I look in the sky.
Oh, nice! I can make my second calculator. Here we go.
Nice.
Oh, sweet mohawk! Look at that.
Continuing on. Most people don't go out of the way for anything. The effectiveness of narrative framing is to shape the ways that people go, first in thought, then in deed. Not sure where in the conversation that came up, but that was Bradford Walker.
I do like his comment about
CalArts is
CalArts.
cancer. Yes, it is a... Yeah. CalArts is to art what Ingsoc is to speech. Mr. Walker, it's funny that you bring up Ingsoc, because I had a thought the other day when it comes to countering the narrative of, the left, progressives and all that. Why don't we just rewrite all their stuff?
Oh, a little
What do
judo
you mean by that?
jujitsu, eh?
Well, I mean, the problem with erasing something from the historical is that it's really, really hard to be sure that you've got the whole thing. And if it gets dug up at some point, it's going to get back in. So why not just make our own version pushing the points that we want?
Like our own historical
And that way
revisionism.
Yes,
Oh, there are
we
people
go
doing
full
it.
miniature.
Oh, that's going on. Oh yeah.
I mean, you rewrite the story to say what we want it to say instead of what the other side wants it to say. Heck, Star Wars, you can easily do that. As with that Orthodox priest who wrote that review of Return of the Jedi and Star Wars.
Yeah, the bishop.
Yeah,
The Bishop rewrote Star Wars?
he wrote a review on it.
Oh.
Of
But-
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
Pointing out how Luke
I mean,
is
if you
actually
want
a
an
monk.
example of revisionism with... Yeah, if you want an example of revisionism with Star Wars, I can't seem to find a copy of it, but there was this fan rewrite basically called the Blackened Mantle, which took the Japanese version of the prequel trilogy, cut some stuff out, turned it into a 2.5-hour long movie, and rewrote the dialogue and a fair chunk of the central plot, and I think improved the story dramatically. So just replace it in the historical record. If someone does turn up the original, no one's going to care because it's going to be seen as the inferior version. And let's face it, Hollywood already does it with reboots.
Yep.
Like The Thing, that's had what, 3 different versions?
At least.
If
There was the
you count-
1956 version, the 1980s version, and then that one thing that happened in the 2000s no one talks about.
The
remake,
video
sequel,
game on the big
prequel
screen.
thing.
Yeah, the Matt Dillon version was much better.
Which is funny because there actually was a Thing video game for PlayStation 2, I believe. That actually takes place after the John Carpenter 1980s Thing film.
So by the way, if you guys look on YouTube right now,
I like the...
just wanted to point out, you can you can see on the save screen here, like especially around the edges, how you're getting that pixelation, and you get like the color dots, like the very pointillist coloring. Yeah, that does not look like that on a CRT. It blends smoothly.
Yeah.
Anyway, what is it that you like? Do tell.
Oh, someone's going to save the Phantom edit and swap it in for Star Wars.
Yeah. Just a thought that I had. And obviously the myths have staying power, or else they wouldn't have stuck around this long.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm this close to muting Star Wars on my timeline. Just hearing people talk about what's that show? That one that just came out that everyone's talking about.
Oh, Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just like, oh geez, are people still talking about this really?
The only
They
way
really aren't.
the only way I recommend that is as an example of how not to write. It's not Last Jedi, as in take that, but it has a lot of failures in trying to do things from a writing standpoint and not succeeding. And then there's the entire cool scenes, bro. Where's the story that's going through it too?
But yeah,
Reminds me of
to circle back
Okay.
around to your idea, Martel, but just rejecting their reality and substituting our own in the historical record. Yes, rest assured, such projects are underway. The difficulty we're running into is the same problem that, say, indie authors are. Like Nick Cole just did with Galaxy's Edge on Amazon, is getting it into the official record, because the enemy gatekeeps that really hard, because it was the first trick they figured out, so they were really good at guarding against attempts to reverse, like to subvert their subversion, if you take my meaning.
So my proposal couldn't be taken as a course of action right now. More once intellectual property protections have gone to the wayside, and hopefully once we get a Hollywood of our something with the resources at least.
Larry Correa today posted a Twitter thread about the difficulty of getting books into libraries because you have one left-leaning librarian. They're really good about making sure that nothing with the hint of the right goes into it. And we had a couple of fellow travelers that are librarians basically saying that a lot of these very important books and the lefty books and the stuff that gets pushed as very important conversations usually leaves the library 2 years later unread. Completely unread, like nobody's checking it out. But getting, we had another author who basically saying, "Hey, look, I'll pay for this. I'll donate. I'll donate. I'll donate an entire wing of the library as far as rooms, tables, chairs, anything. If you'll get my books in there." And no, they won't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You really need to. Much like school boards, you need to be on the library boards, and even then, it's a challenge.
Yeah, there are some things you can only do once you take power.
Yeah,
which is why libertarianism is so inherently absurd and self-defeating, because it denies itself the one tool that could actually give it some success.
Yeah, it's as utopian as communism, just the other side of the coin.
Well,
Maybe
exactly. Both
Go ahead.
libertarianism and communism can only work in a world where everyone is either a libertarian or a communist.
Yep.
Maybe we shouldn't be taking political advice from science fiction.
We should not be inventing the torment nexus. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, good idea. It's kind of a catch-22. Speaking of like 60s literature, that to get in power, you over these institutions, you need power of the institutions. So it's just about finding a crack, finding an in, and really, what looks to be happening is the parallel institutions and parallel platforms are appearing, which are showing the nascent signs of budding into parallel institutions, and some of those have started to get traction, and they're laying the foundation for parallel society, and that's really what it's going to take. And honestly, it's just like in the sciences, right? Like, how did plate tectonic theory, how did special relativity, how did these revolutionary theories finally win out? Anybody?
Because their critics died.
Yes.
Yeah, no, not so much the critics. It's the people who were advocating in many cases. You had someone who's
Right.
advocating a parallel theory or an opposing theory. That person dies. Now the new theory has an opportunity to move in.
Yeah, and the people in charge now are zero neuroplasticity boomers, and sad to say, we need to wait for them to age out or die out for this more bootstraps and individuality and just vote harder next time. Yeah, that attitude just got to die. Like, we're really at the point where we've changed everyone's mind that is gonna get changed on that. I mean, I've spent the last several years on social media trying to crack that nut, and I think it's already, to mix a metaphor, born as essential fruit. So we just kind of need to ignore, like, we need to let the dead bury the dead and just get on with our lives and get on with building parallel structures.
Yeah, it's amazing how many theories in science were hanging around on the fringes, waiting for some gatekeeper to die, and when that happened, suddenly it became, oh yeah, why don't we consider this? Oh, great, we can move on after 50 years.
Yeah. Friend of the show, David Stewart. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking about that, who's going to have to die for us to get over our string theory fixation?
I don't know. That's personal view only. That's one of the most ridiculous bits of garbage that has run up since dark matter and dark energy.
Wasn't dark matter just a scientist putting in a variable to balance an equation out?
Unfortunately, most of this stuff is, well, let's play with the math, and does the math make sense? Well, that must be true if it makes sense. And there's little or no experimental verification for a lot of this stuff.
Worse, you get into things where they're fundamentally cannot. I've seen theories. Read Scientific American anytime. There's theories where they're fundamentally cannot be an experimental proof. There is no way to do it. It's not that the technology doesn't exist. It's just, it's literally impossible.
Yeah, it's mathematics. Essentially, it's myth making via mathematics.
That's a good term.
It's right up there with idolatry, yeah. I'm going to steal it. Anyway,
Absolutely. Spread it around.
Well, if you can't experimentally verify something, that's not science anymore. That's philosophy.
Well, or it's myth making. I wouldn't even classify it as philosophy. It's essentially grinding out some formulas, saying, well, gee, the formulas seem to say this, and that must be the way the world works.
It's mistaken.
Go ahead.
It's mistaking the map for the terrain. And
exactly.
That's a huge problem, and it's been a huge problem in science for 40 years. Why else, a lot of public policy is built on models as opposed to experiments.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah, it's global warming, greenhouse gases, pollution.
Mhm.
It's one
And
thing. It's one thing to take a little bit of a sample of the water, and it's like, okay, we've got unsafe levels of this chemical here. It's another thing to say that, we've run the models and X amount of CO2 and all that sort of stuff. In the 80s, they forgot to account in their models for the light scatter for the reverse effects of pollution. Like actually, pollution wasn't creating greenhouse gases. It was creating gases that mitigated it. So all that's, according to their models, everything should have been hotter in 20 years, and it wasn't. It wasn't because of what was being emitted.
right.
You see, if that mattered to them, though, then objective reality, as in the observations around us, that their models were wrong, would have gone through to them already a long time ago. But it hasn't.
Carl Sagan has much to answer for.
Yeah, he does.
Um,
I think the big thing that ended up happening, though, is we started listening to public policy analysts instead of actually listening to people who are, I guess, more on the engineering side of the house, and say, okay, well, we've got these models that say this. Let's go actually run some tests to see if the models are bearing out. Most of these things would have been very easy to test, easy to collect the data, easy to run an analysis, and yet we don't see that happening.
But
No, I
if you
think the
find
most-
the actual answer, how are you going to justify the next $500,000 research grant?
Oh, trust me. I mean, high energy physics has much to answer for in that respect.
I think the most stark example about that is I think it was just last year, at the end of last year, in Glacier National Park in Alaska. They removed some signs for the public that said, global warming predicts, or what do they call it now, climate change predicts that by 2021, all the glaciers in Glacier National Park will be gone.
It wasn't just Glacier National Park. If you were visiting national parks over the last few years, you found them in a lot of national parks.
Yeah, all the snowfall will be gone, or the glaciers will be gone.
Well, that's
People
what
reading
happens when you live in a particularly pious age and there's a state religion.
Yeah, it's just funny. I think they're going to learn a lesson soon, if they haven't already, to not put hard timelines on their predictions, because when they invariably fail and pass, that
Right.
raises a lot of eyebrows.
You and I have, everyone here has been alive long enough to know that they're just going to make the prediction another 15 years in the future. Like,
You're dealing
the end of the world has been 20 years away since 20 years before I was born.
I remember reading as a kid saying that the ocean was going to rise however many feet, like 20 feet, by like 2010 or something like that in just 10 years.
Don't forget, global cooling and a new ice age was the 70s.
Yeah.
Florida is going to be underwater soon.
Yeah.
And then there was going to be a population explosion. We were going to have 10 billion people on Earth by 1990.
Don't get me started on Paul Ehrlich. Please don't do that.
Oh, and then you remember orofluorocarbons? Hairspray is going to punch a hole clear through the ozone layer and kill us all.
Yeah.
When's the last time I even heard about the hole in the ozone layer? I'm trying to remember.
I mean, just compare and contrast. I mean, it's the same generation that had Hal Lindsey and the late great Planet Earth. Jesus is 79 Reasons Jesus is Coming back in 1979. So it's wars, rumors of wars, that type of stuff. It's just what that particular generation stuck with. as one of their faults, and unfortunately, they're still leading us right now. So,
Actually, in chat, Christopher Cortoon raises an interesting point, which is what's interesting is the medieval villages they've been finding under receding glaciers in Europe, which places that have been dismissed as myth for a long time in historical circles, and the tax and census records from them had to be fraud by the local lords. Which, that is something to point out. The Earth has been far warmer in the past than it is now. It's also been colder.
And it's funny that periods of higher warmth than now have been associated with more prosperity, almost invariably. And periods of coldness, like the Little Ice Age, have been basically periods of misery and death and plague.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Bill Gates, who seems hell-bent on becoming a supervillain. You know the plot of Snowpiercer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where they try to block out the sun to prevent global warming. So apparently Bill Gates watched that movie and decided, what if we actually did it?
Yeah. Torment Nexus 2.
Yeah.
Well, it's keeps on coming back to, I think, the idea that we've trained people to read science fiction completely the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not here are these dire warnings. No, oh, that's cool technology. Let's build that. And a lot of that comes out of the idea that science fiction has to be the symbols of the new age.
Yeah.
So, it's the stories are now settings, they're not stories anymore.
Mm-hmm. Drop the link in the Discord for the chat members here too.
Yeah, well, look, pointing out the death cult's hypocrisy is it's fun for the whole family, but what we all know is the reason for it is they're postmodern and they're post-truth, right? They believe that it's will that makes the world go round, unbound by an external constraint, because acknowledging any external reality would impose hard limits on the pursuit of personal preferences, and that is the only evil in their book. So they can manage the feat of holding two contradictory ideas in their head at the same time. And it exacts a terrible mental toll, because that's unnatural and frankly evil. So hence the rampant personality disorders and antidepressant use among them. But they've been conditioned to think that's normal. So that's why they always lie. They cannot deal in good faith, and they can talk out of both sides of their mouths by on one hand saying, well, I trust the science until it comes to like the bell curve or FBI crime statistics. And then those are hate facts. So you're never going to pin them down. You're never going to make a charge of hypocrisy stick, because that requires the person you're talking to having shame, and they have none. So it's a fool's errand.
Yeah, and using logic on them is just, it's also exercising futility. What was that quote that said, using reason on those who have eschewed its use is like administering medicine to the dead?
Well, logic is rooted in white supremacy and structures of colonization, you see.
Oh, right. I've also heard that. I've also heard that mathematics is also rooted in white supremacy. I've been told this.
It is. So is the Christian religion, family values, and being on time for work, according to that exhibit put out by that museum a couple of years back. Which,
oh no, they had that. They even had that in Lockheed Martin in their anti-white training. Exhibits of whiteness or traits of whiteness include showing up to work in time and valuing time and hard work.
Yeah, if you want, I would say that 2 books to read to fully understand the theme. Actually, just progressive mindset period. Orwell's 1984 and C.S. Lewis's That Hideous Strength. Because he hit the nail exactly on the head with that one.
Yeah, that is too scary a book for modern times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people read that book and got the wrong things out of it, probably.
Oh,
From
yeah,
their perspective, they got exactly the right things.
True. The 1984 wasn't supposed to be an instruction manual meme.
Yeah. And we're right back to don't build the Torment Nexus. So the key thing to understand when trying to deal with a death cult is their every utterance, their every argument, to the extent it can be called an argument, is just an attempt to use you as a stepping stone to ascend to the moral high ground. They always are trying to accrue unto themselves unwarranted moral superiority. Okay? That's what their every interaction is about. Even with each other, they're trying to play moral king of the mountain. So just don't let them. And the best way to do that is just never talk to them. Like, talk about them or at them, but never engage them. It's a pure waste of time. There is nothing to be gained from it. Like, you're gonna catch a ban, or at the best, everything you say is just gonna be twisted around to label you as a racist, sexist, bigot, Nazi, homophobe, etc. So it's better, like, if you find a good example of death cult ritual cant to use as an object lesson, just like screen cap it or quote it or archive it and talk clinically about it, like dissect it, diagnose it. Like, oh, well, you can see here how the death cultist is attempting to usurp the moral high ground in this way, right? Just like Jane Goodall in The Bush or something. That's really the only benefit to paying them any kind of mind at all.
I would say even that, just don't. It's like arguing with a hostile lawyer. Everything you say can and will be used against you. They have more practice with it, and they have the legal system on their side.
Well said. Now, the one exception I would point to, just because it's tried and true and time-tested, is the witch test. But that's under very specific circumstances of a death cultist attempting to use usually a crude misunderstanding of Christian doctrine or some kind of biblical proof text as a handy cudgel to beat the dog. And it's automatically a bad faith argument. So in that case, even you limit your engagement to, okay, we'll confess that Jesus is the Christ and God is raised from the dead, or cede all moral authority. And then as soon as the witch answers with anything else, just automatically declare failure, forfeiture of all moral authority, and block. Way too many people forget that step. Yeah, this is a great time for PSA and for a reminder, because I see a lot of people applying the witch test and doing it wrong. Like, okay, guys, I know what I'm talking about. I've formulated it through long trial and error and study. Don't improvise with it. Don't play around with the formula. It's as soon as you see a woke cultist trying to feign Christian morality, to undermine Christian morality, apply the test. Don't argue unless the very next thing out of your interlocutor's mouth is Jesus is the Christ and God is raised him from the dead. Immediately, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Declare you have failed. You have no moral authority. Blocked for witchery, and then block and cease all engagement. Like, I see way too many people engaging in lengthy, like, freaking 11 tweet long, like, syllogisms in dialogues. No, it's not dialogue. It's you administering an inquisition and then announcing the verdict and passing sentence, and that's it.
The proper response to a heretic isn't argument. Well, okay, the proper response is argument at first, and if they persist, then you remand them and burn them.
Yeah, you use the hammer on the heretic. You use the gentle drip feed of truth on the heathen. There's a difference.
Yeah. Actually, Christopher Cortum, it's amazing how consistent the response to the witch test is. Just out of curiosity, has anyone ever actually passed a witch test that you've posed them?
I've seen one.
Yeah,
I'm not in the business of administering that test, but I've seen one person, and they were pretty offended afterwards.
Well, then that's not a witch. See, because it's a test. It's not a gotcha. If the person can make the profession, then 9 times out of 10 he's not a witch. I've only seen one witch technically pass it, but it was someone who was too dumb to fully realize the ramifications of what he was doing, so made a false profession, which is obvious because he did it mockingly. And I mean, and if you have any ability to read social cues, you'll know when this is happening. Because like the guy also like posted a picture of like ethnic Jesus back at me, thinking I'd be offended, because like, oh, well, all like pro-Trump right-wing Christian conservatives are racists, right, and would be offended that, or like just have their minds blown that Jesus wasn't white and everything. So we're talking about that level of intellect, and so in that case, what I did was praised our wayward brother for returning to the fold, created a group called Fundamentalist Born Again Christians, added him to it, and told everyone. And I got blocked by him pretty fast.
On the subject of the, ethnic Jesus thing, one, we actually have a description of him from someone who wrote a letter to their friend in Rome describing the guy. And surprise, it actually matches up pretty well with the paintings that were made within a century or two of his death.
Yeah, and we also have the shroud.
And two...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That too. And two, someone pointed out that it's roughly analogous to someone in the year 4022 going, well, people think that Barack Obama looked like this tall, thin black dude, but scientists have taken random DNA samples from people who lived around that time, and the average in America was this short, fat Mexican guy.
Yeah.
That's about the level of analysis this is coming from.
Yeah. Oh,
right. It's the same. It's the same kind of analysis of ancient humans that says, "Well, we ran around naked." Okay, well, making clothing out of grasses or hide or the like is quite possible, but that's not going to survive for several thousands of years of decay. Like horn implements like combs. But let's assume they all ran around naked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even really have a lot of horn combs from like the 17th century because they biodegrade, but we know from letters they existed.
Oh, did somebody see the Townsend's episode recently on horn?
How,
Yes, it
how
is.
how does everyone here not see every Townsend's episode? Wait, what?
That's right.
Townsend's is a gem and a treasure on the internet.
It's the best cooking
What is
show
Townsend's?
ever. Okay, who wants to field this one?
Before we go go on, James Townsend recently passed away. So eternal memory.
Amen.
So the father of the of is it John that's doing it now?
Yes.
Yeah. But okay, I'll field it. Townsend's is a channel that deals in kind of that reenactment 1700s, 1800s, colonial. Usually does cooking, but it does tend to branch out into various other implements, such as horn. Sometimes the histories of various expeditions. So it's not like Kings and Generals, or it's not like portraying a history. It's kind of that living history. These are the recipes. Very enthusiastic, kind of that old PBS style. That's what I think, when they're actually conveying information as opposed to advocacy and with that. So he does his best. He does his best to take like the modern world out of it and just kind of present the period. Very enthusiastic with it. Very well researched. But at the same time, one of the reasons why I like it is it takes the geekery out of cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I got into cooking from Alton Brown, and then went through Anthony Bourdain, and came into Townsend's, and it's kind of like the antithesis of both the cook is geek and the cook is punk. And just kind of down to earth average guy.
Yeah. So in the Discord chat,
wholesome channel.
In the Discord chat, Ardenon and I, Martel, have put some great introductory videos for you. My contribution is the only fried chicken recipe you will ever need for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You will
he pulls all
crave
recipes.
it fortnightly.
And he pulls all his recipes from contemporary cookbooks from like the 1700s or the 1800s.
Yeah, but this...
Like, he pulls it from direct sources from old surviving documents.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, this chicken's one of them. It's a totally different flavor profile than we are used to today. But when you try it, it will make you wonder why we ever abandoned, like, acid-based poultry marinades.
Mm-hmm.
Because it starts with a marinade. Oh, dude. I want some right now. But I'm like snowed in.
Japanese fried chicken is made
acid-based, like lemon lime type acid, or heavier acid?
Lemon and malt vinegar.
Okay.
Although, I haven't found it yet. Malt vinegar and verjus, which is unripe green grape juice.
I've heard that pineapple, like a limited amount of pineapple, is supposed to be good for breaking down meat.
Yes.
Yeah, it has enzymes in it.
I think that's more enzymatic than acid.
Yeah,
it is.
just like papaya.
Yeah, I'm not a chemist.
My contribution is a cheese tart recipe that's basically like a cheesecake pie almost from 1682 that he cooked up, and it's incredible when you try it yourself.
Well, you have restaurant industry experience, right?
Oh, look.
Yeah, I don't want to dox. But
Yes, but not baking experience.
Yeah, it's rare.
But not baking experience.
Yeah, bakers are really good cooks and vice versa, right?
Yeah, baking is a very exact thing.
Yeah.
You can fudge with salt and sugar and whatnot to your taste, but as far as baking powder versus baking soda versus flour and the exact amounts you want to get the amount of rise you want in a cake or a crust or what have you, it's much more exact and much less forgiving.
Baking's a science, cooking's an art.
Well said. But speaking of that, so how many of you guys have seen the series Townsend's did on bread adulterants from like the 18th century? Like this stuff they used to put, millers used to mix into bread flour to stretch out their product.
Uh-oh. Like sawdust or...
No, like in case of a poor harvest.
No, like
Yeah.
like sawdust would be
That
one of them.
that was the most benign.
Oh,
That's
I
the
think
best case.
I think some of. Oh, I'm thinking of a different one then.
Yeah, like well, because
Because
back in the day, there was effectively a tax on millers for the poor, that there was a certain quota of their flour that they had to donate for bread for the poor. It was basically the food stamp system of the day. And of course, the millers didn't like it because that was product they couldn't profit from. So to kind of make up for it, they would come up with ways to cut their flour. And so, like any vaguely white powdery substance that was cheap they could get a hold of, they'd put in there, and it led to widespread sickness and deaths. So this London physician made an in-depth field study of it, and he published this pamphlet, and I forget what it was called, but it was basically, hey, here's what's in the bread you're eating, and like why you're dying. And it immediately, like overnight, caused a panic and caused like a crackdown on the millers and the bakers. But oh dude, they would put like so there's a reason there are a lot of mills and bakeries located along the Thames near chalk pits. So there's one hint for you, where there'll be this old mill with like a big excavated chalk pit out back. But then they would also put stuff like pearl ash, sawdust, lead. I mean, some pretty hideous stuff.
You know, in Bavaria in Germany around the similar time period, I remember there was a law that they passed where actually the only four ingredients in beer could be like wheat, barley, hops, and water, because they had the same problem where brewers were kind of putting all sorts of foul, dangerous stuff in their brews and essentially killing people.
I think that law is still on the books.
Yes, it's actually still on the books.
Which is a problem with American craft beers, because we don't follow the same tradition.
That little antifreeze won't hurt you.
But for them,
Yeah.
Well, it's like, okay, what is it? Water. Okay, the water, hops, wheat, etc. Well, what happens if you put some like fruit in there? Well, that's not following it. You know, it's a lot more benign than antifreeze, but we don't follow the German traditions. So
Yeah, there was a French law that got passed in 1993 concerning the exact way in which bread could be made and marketed. Like pain au levain could only be made if it was done according to a set procedure, have a maximum pH of 4.3 and an acidity of at least 900 parts per million, like that level of detail. Not because of any ingredient tampering, but just because the French are massive sinners of bread.
Wow.
Like, and that killed it.
Yeah. But
sorry, I just didn't catch that last bit. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just looking something up here. Go on. I'm just checking for there's this one town in Europe that was famous for its gingerbread. And so much so that it had a secret ingredient known only to the head of the Bakers Guild, and he was the only one who could apply it. So, like, every day he would go around to the bakeries where they're making the gingerbread, and he would add the secret ingredient himself. And to this day, we're not exactly sure what it was.
Oh, that happens all the time. And, yeah. It was,
I know Germany, gingerbread is kind of a guild control production, especially in like Nuremberg. Nuremberg has a very famous gingerbread. Is that what you're thinking of?
That might have been it.
Austria too.
I'm also saying Turin gingerbread from the state of the Teutonic Order, which is modern day Poland. It was also big there, but yeah, it was one of those places.
Yeah, I know in Germany, especially guilds. I know in Germany, guilds are still kind of a thing in a lot of ways, in a lot of locales. And at the very least, if guilds aren't a thing, then traditions are a thing. Like in outside of any bakery, you'll see the sign of an upside down pretzel hanging out, because that's a traditional sign in Germany for a bakery. The same way, like the red, white, and blue pole is a sign for a barber, or 3 lampposts is a sign for a pawn shop. The upside down pretzel was a sign for a bakery in Germany.
Well, 2 fun facts about the other 2 guild symbols that you mentioned. So, the barber pole originally didn't have blue. It was just red, and it stands for blood because barbers were medieval doctors as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the pawn shop symbol is actually 3 gold balls, which refers to Saint Nicholas delivering the 3 money bags for the 3 daughters' dowries. Which is also where we get the idea of hanging up stockings near the chimney and Saint Nicholas coming down the chimney to deliver presents. And he's also the patron saint of pawnbrokers.
Funny that. If we're gonna take symbols from Saint Nicholas, I would have preferred an open hand palm to symbolize a slap heard around the world at the Council of Nicaea, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, getting back to how to deal
Patron
with
saint of prostitutes, thieves, and sailors too.
Yep. Well,
I'm not sure where the prostitute part of it comes in.
I don't know. I'd have to look that up. This is the first I'd heard of that. But I am familiar with the Eastern Church saying that, well, if God dies, at least we'll still have St. Nicholas. That's how popular he is. And rightly so. But anyway, we've gone for almost 2 hours, so I'm going to call the stream here. But anyone on the panel is welcome to hang around in chat on Discord and continue the conversation. In fact, I've got something to discuss with you gentlemen in private. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us. We're back. We're going to get back on our regular schedule of Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Around 9 p.m. Central, 10 Eastern. I think I got the Pacific time wrong in the announcement tonight. My bad. But they're weirdos out there. Anyway, this has been Final Fantasy Tactics Retrospective on Geek Gab. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being among our 1,000 subscribers. For Retrospective, this has been Brian, and my panelists tonight have been...
Ferdinand Studios.
Crusader Saracen.
Martel.
And Pulp Archivist.
And Catholic Lancer had to leave early. If you like the show, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe. Help get us from 1,000 to 10,000. Click the bell icon to notify yourself of these and the awesome main Geek Gab show on Saturdays, where Daddy Warpig and Dorn all discuss pop culture. And I hear tell they've got John Delarose coming up. Should be exciting. Thanks again for joining us, and remember, games